So I want to begin with a review of what we did in the last presentation. In the last presentation, we talked about a compound statement. Remember that we said a compound statement was two simple statements that we combined with a connective. And we talked about there being four connectives. These are the words and, or, if then, and if and only if. And we also did a symbol for each of these connectives. So if you remember, for the and connective, we used the symbol that looks like that. For the or connective, we used a symbol that looks kind of like a V. For the conditional, we did an arrow going from left to right. And for the biconditional, the if and only if, we used the double arrow for our symbol. There's one other symbol that we want to introduce here that we didn't talk about in the last presentation, and that is a symbol for a negation. The symbol for negation, and you would want to put this in your notes so that you would have it, is going to be this kind of tilde symbol, which looks sort of like a sideways S. All right, so the first type of problem that we're going to work on, we're going to take a sentence that's a compound statement, and we're going to translate it to symbols. So our first sentence says, Tom ordered spaghetti and lasagna for dinner. So you want to begin by identifying the connective in the statement. So the connective is going to be the word and. Typically, before the connective, you will have one simple statement. And after the connective, you will have a second simple statement. Remember, a compound statement is two simple statements joined together by a connective. So typically one is to the left and one is to the right of that connective word. So with that in mind, what I'm going to do is I'm going to label each of the simple sentences with a letter. Now typically when we're talking about logic, we use the letters P and Q. So I'm going to say that P is going to be my first simple statement, which is going to be the statement that says, Tim ordered spaghetti. And then I'm going to go ahead and say for dinner. And so that's going to be statement P. For the second simple statement, I'm going to use the variable Q. Now, I have to work on the wording just a little bit because the only thing to the right of the connective is lasagna for dinner, and we need it to sound like a sentence. So I'm going to go ahead and say Tim ordered lasagna for dinner. Now, once you've identified the P and the Q, you're ready to write it in terms of logical symbols. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take these two statements and we're going to write it this way. We're going to say that the statement starts with a P. It starts by talking about the spaghetti. Then we have the connective and, so we'll use the symbol for and. And then the other statement, simple statement, is going to be the lasagna part, which is the Q. Okay, so this is the answer. But in order to have that, you also need to identify what is the P and what is the Q. All right, so not only do you want to write P and Q like we did right there, but you also want to write what P is and what Q is. All right, so let's go ahead and go to the next one. The next one says either Jack is early or Jane is late. Again, identify your connective first. So the connective is the or. Remember that to the left you should find one simple statement, and to the right you'll find the second one, typically. All right, so let's go ahead and write them out. So P, the first simple statement, to the left of the connective is Jack is early. And the second simple statement is the Q, and that's going to be to the right of the connective, and that will be Jane is late. And again, once you have identified what the P and the Q are, you're ready to translate this symbol, translate into the logical symbols. So our statement says either Jack is early, so that's the P, or we'll use our symbol, Jane is late, and that's the Q. And notice that the word either is not a part of the P or the Q. It's just an extra word in the problem. Okay, so the third one says the performance will start on time if and only if the performers are ready. Again, we'll identify our connective. So we've got, in this case, if and only if. We'll have one simple statement to the left and one simple statement to the right. All right, so our P statement will be the one to the left. That one will say the performance will start on time. And our Q statement will be to the right of the connective. That will be the performers are ready. Once we've identified what the P and the Q are, we're ready to translate. So as I read the statement, the performance will start on time. That's going to be the P. If and only if, remember that's your double arrow, the performers are ready, and so that's the Q. Okay, we're going to continue with this and work a few more examples. The next one says, we will finish fixing the fence this weekend if it does not rain. All right, so again, we want to identify our connective so that we know what type of problem we have. This is an if-then statement. I've got the if right here. Now, the order on this is a little bit backwards, and so this one ends up being just a little bit more difficult to translate. When we're talking about an if-then statement, typically, do it this way. Typically, the if is going to be the P, and the then statement will be the Q, because the way that you want to write this thing when you're done is if P, then Q. All right, so we need to identify which part of the sentence is the if and label that the P. So we will finish fixing the fence this weekend if it does not rain. So I'm going to say that the P is going to be the part behind the connective. Now, another thing that you want to be aware of is that it is accepted to write each of the simple sentences in the positive format. So I don't want to write for the P, it does not rain. I want to write for the P, it rains. Okay, so let me make sure that that's clear. So this is the statement that we're looking at for the P because it's the if part. And remember that we've already said that it's the if that we want to label the P. Okay, but I don't want to write it does not rain because that puts it in the negative sense with the not. So I'm going to take that out and just write it rains. All right, the Q will be the other part of the statement. Okay, sometimes it's going to have the word then, sometimes it doesn't. But if it does not rain, then we will finish fixing the fence this weekend. So I'm going to write this down as my Q. We will finish fixing the fence this weekend. Okay, so we've now identified the P and the Q. And we know that the connective in between is going to be the arrow. Now, if I write it this way, then what I have written is, if it rains, then we will finish fixing the fence this weekend. That's not exactly what the original statement says. The original statement says, if it does not rain. So how do we do that? We're going to add the negation symbol in front of the P. So now it's going to read, if it does not rain, then we will finish fixing the fence this weekend. Okay, so that one is a little more difficult. You may need to look at it again. All right, feel free to email and ask questions if you have a question about that one. All right, so let's move on to the next one. The next one says, Beth and Bill went up the hill. All right, so again, I'm going to find my connective, which is here. Now, to the left, we'll have one of our statements, and to the right, we'll have the other. Now, the P statement, the one to the left, if I only write what's written down, then I'm only going to be writing Beth. I think I'm going to need to finish up that sentence. So what did Beth do? Beth went up the hill. So I'm going to go ahead and write that as the entire simple statement that we have for P. Beth went up the hill. And then for Q, I'm going to write the right part. So that's where we talk about Bill. So Bill went up the hill. And so when we translate into our logical symbols, we're going to do the P first. We're going to use the and symbol and then the Q. So this will read, Beth went up the hill and Bill went up the hill, which is the same thing as Beth and Bill went up the hill. All right, so our last one says Jenny and Tom will leave for their vacation in the morning. So again, here's your and, here's your connective. One statement will be to the left, talking about Jenny. One statement will be to the right, talking about Tom. So let's write the P statement. The P statement deals with Jenny. Again, you're going to have to write more than just Jenny, though. What does Jenny do? Jenny will leave for vacation in the morning. All right, statement Q is to the right of the connective. It has to do with Tom. What will Tom do? Tom will leave for vacation in the morning. And then again, we want to write that in our translation for our symbols. So we're going to do a P, we're going to use the symbol for and then a Q. So this will read, Jenny will leave for vacation in the morning and Tom will leave for vacation in the morning. Or we could read it the way that we have it written in the sentence. Jenny and Tom will leave for their vacation in the morning.